Thank you for staying with us. Some medical experts have concluded that humans need salt for fluid balance and muscle and nerve function. Just like other foods, anything taken in high proportion can cause damage to the body. Now, the World Health Organization has said most people consume too much salt, an average of 9 to 12 grams a day, which is double the intake recommended. While salt intake of less than 5 grams a day may help to reduce blood pressure, risk of cardiovascular disease and stroke, amongst others, too much may do the opposite, which is an increase in high blood pressure. Joining us in the studio to discuss the benefits as well as the risks is the Chief Medical Director of Heritage Men's Clinic, Dr. Rashid Abbasi. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, in a place like Lagos State, where you have everyone wakes up so early, you are busy running up and down, you just grab whatever you see in traffic, wherever mama put, whatever it is you see. How do you begin to know when it is too much or even too little, so to speak?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. So salt, as we alluded to earlier, it's very common, especially in West Africa. We consume more than actually what the World Health is reporting. We consume about 4 or 5 times what is acceptable.
Why?
So everything we eat, just like mama put everything, it's in the processed food. That's where we're getting into trouble. If we go back to the historical benefits of salt, salt is meant to be preservative. We use it to preserve food processes. But now everything you buy, every processed food has loaded sodium in it. And the recent study that came out of the European and American study shows that, especially in African Americans, we're talking mostly people of sub-Sahara, the more salt you consume, the higher your blood pressure goes. And everything that goes with high blood pressure comes with stroke, comes with a heart attack, even diabetes. These are cardiovascular issues. Yes.
Is this to diabetes salt?
Absolutely.
How?
I didn't know
Absolutely.
that.
How?
So wherever salt goes, water goes. The issue of diabetes is hyperglycemia. You need the water to dilute that. But when you have so much salt, everything goes against your heart. So your heart goes under stress, your cortisol level goes up, sugar goes up.
Interesting. But then again, back to the question of how do you measure? How do you know that this is too much or even too little
Yes.
when you are consuming every day?
Everything. So absolutely, we want everybody, especially our listeners, to be educated consumers. We want to start looking for the signs, especially in men. When you find out that you now snore, we're not talking about just being tired when you sleep. You snore every time, it's time to check your salt. When you find out that your ankles are swelling, you're having puffy ankles, it's time to check your salt level. And if you're the type that says, oh, no blood pressure, but you're waking up too many times with a lot of headache, you go to your doctor and your blood pressure is shooting off and you don't have any family history of this, it's time to check your salt consumption.
Interesting. So how about women? Because you talked about men. We also consume salt. How do we know?
Absolutely. And we see that especially in the northern part of Nigeria, the part of Zaria. The women there have highest risk of postpartum cardiomyopathy. That is after childbirth, their heart fails. All because of salt. Absolutely. All because of salt.
Are they aware of this?
I'm not sure if they do.
But the problem with me with salt is that we can't eat without salt. That's the problem. Even Jesus said, so you are the salt. If the earth loses its saltiness, so what are we talking about? Are we working against the grain?
No. So
even grains, them, they have salt.
Absolutely. Everything in moderation is okay. Salt is meant to be the preservative. So when you do that and it's time to cook, no need to add extra. What we see in West Africa is even before people taste the food, they put extra salt in it. They think that it has to be.
Yeah, when we were growing up, that was what we used to have this salt. Anytime, in fact, growing up, we thought that once the soup is ready or the rice, anything, before you eat, you must
add salt to it.
Add salt to it.
And that's what's actually killing us. Honestly, on a serious note, this is making us lose a lot of quality lives. And it goes beyond just the hypertension. Even in men now, we see the effect on their sperm production. So we're talking long-term effects just from adding too much salt.
So are there options that people can perhaps look or use in their food aside salt?
Absolutely. So what we recommend, this is from the American College of Cardiology, go natural. We're talking garlic, we're talking ginger, we're talking cloves. These are things that will actually give you good spices in your food.
That is true.
And before you know it, in a matter of 7 to 10 days, your taste bud will forget the salt. And so you can imagine the tremendous amount of health benefits you're going to get just by abandoning the extra salt.
Has there been any survey about the social consequence of salt? What I mean is, a lot of people eat out. And businesses
Thrive.
Mama feels that if I put a lot of salt in that ogbono soup or that goosey soup, it is sweeter. Yes. And I'll make the money. When the man will eat, when the man puts the food inside mouth, he say, Mama, I want more.
Yes.
You are looking for more trouble.
Yes.
How has there been any real one? Even in parties, they make the stew so that as they turn it, they put more salt and so on. And then when you are eating the party, you are so energized. Before you go there, you go and join the Omwambe and start dancing because you add such delicious plate of rice. So don't we need to do a study about, and there has to be restrictions on this? Because what I'm saying this is that in New York, this was about sugar. The mayor, Bloomberg, the mayor of New York at that time said that the bill that the city was paying for diabetes was becoming too much. Yeah. And so there was a law that the size of every soda, including Coca-Cola, should be reduced. So that there will be. So when one time I went to New York around that time, and I saw that, I said, no, don't bring on this thing, don't bring on small like this. It was not small. It was because they wanted to chasten the impulse and the appetite of the citizens. Can we do that? Are we getting to a stage where we have to say, when you are in the party, this is the amount of salt that you bring, and then to sensitize the public about it?
Absolutely. You alluded to very sensitive areas. So the study actually reveals the correlation between socioeconomic status and education level. The more educated you are, you know the adverse effect of salt. Then you try to stay away from it. The study about New York and Mayor Bloomberg, they were actually late to the party. Europeans have been doing that. When you go to European fast food restaurants, the sizes of their drinks are so small and they control. So lately now, US government has also instituted the same restriction on salt. This December is the deadline for restaurant and food manufacturers to cut below the minimum requirement.
Can we do that in Nigeria?
We need to be educated consumers.
But even to do that will be difficult because we don't have a formal economy.
That's true.
Where you can say, okay, this is how to monitor how they do it. How do you go and meet the man who is owning a restaurant and the man says, people are saying that this your soup is not sweet, they are going to the other side because you are putting small salt.
Absolutely. But how about seasoning cubes? There are those who say yes.
Yeah, okay, that's another one. Yes.
Yes, you may be saying salt, but how about seasoning cubes where we have MSG and all of it?
Yes.
There are those who say that MSG is good, but there are those who say you can't totally take it out, but you should use it in a certain proportion. Speak to that.
Actually, so without endorsing or lack of endorsement, so the likes of Maggi, the Knorr, they are loaded with sodium. And these are the hidden ways. So we need to really avoid them. Again, it goes back to consumers. We have to make that decision. So if you have a chef or you're eating outside, that's where the socioeconomic level comes in.
Yes.
Now that you know, or if you're dealing with some of these afflictions, high blood pressure, you're having stroke at a young age, or women with swollen feet, swollen ankles, then you know you don't have to go back to that mama put because something is not right. As sweet as the food may be, it's not good for your health.
It's a sweet death.
Sweet death. All right, we need to quickly go on a commercial break. When we return, we'll continue the conversation. Stay with us. All right, thank you for staying with us. The conversation behind the scene is always interesting.
Tell us what you said about snoring.
You couldn't wait.
So the issue with snoring, we notice that the more salt you consume, the more fluid you gain, and this makes your neck size go up. So the moment you cut out the salt, your water goes down, the snoring goes away.
This is very good for a lot of women.
Absolutely.
Because they just tell... Because
not
there's
only women.
No. What I mean women is that... No, I know of a story of a man, of a woman, whether it was a story, I saw a movie or something, when when the son asks the mom, why are you sleeping outside? Say, your father is snoring again. Say, I can't sleep.
Yes.
you know?
Okay, now I get the story.
Say, your father is snoring again.
So let's also go back to the issue you raised earlier, talking about salt leading to causes of cardiovascular issues.
Yes.
So are you saying that if we take out salt, all those who have issues with high blood pressure and all of that, that will resolve it?
Absolutely. Don't take my word for it. The research is abundantly clear. So especially black men, when we treat blood pressure, the cause of blood pressure in white men is not the same as in blacks. Black blood pressure is 87% related to salt consumption. Hence, when we treat black men for high blood pressure, we give them diuretic, a medication that makes them pee. When the water goes out, the salt goes out, blood pressure comes down. When there is no blood pressure, you're less likely, almost zero, to get a stroke. When there's no blood pressure, your heart will pump better, so there will be no cardiac failure. And this is endemic among blacks.
This cuisine culture now that is causing. And our food is such that they are tasteless without salt. How do you eat egusi soup without salt? The egusi soup is tasteless.
So we
or
have
ogbono soup without salt.
We have
How do you
alternatives.
eat rice, the stew without salt? I mean, Igbo people can do a lot, can eat a lot of things without salt, you know. But even there, if you go to some of their fast food stores,
Yes.
they put a lot of salt. I'm sure that's why they came with those rules.
Exactly, because we're paying a huge price as a society, because we're losing a lot of quality lives. But when it comes to a matter of life saving, the more we know, the better we should act.
Absolutely.
So we need to cut out the salt, because you can use alternatives, the gingers, the garlic, the cloves, the crayfish, even the local eru.
Yes.
All these will give you what you need.
But are
In
you
fact,
saying we should,
crayfish is a very good source of replacement.
yes.
Yes.
Are you saying we should cut out salt totally?
Absolutely. The bare minimum is 1,500 milligrams. That's less than a gram. But the sooner you can cut it out, it takes only 7 days, your taste bud will not miss the salt. Absolutely.
I know somebody who stopped taking salt, and the person used to have a lot of blood pressure.
Honestly.
But stopped taking salt, the person doesn't even. I've been wondering, how do you eat without salt? There's not be all this, but you have to really teach your tongue.
Yes, your taste
How to
bud will
live
change.
with it
Absolutely.
over
Absolutely.
time. It's discipline.
Yes.
You're either disciplined to live or you eat to die.
So there are those who say that in the place of the regular salt, you can use Himalayan salt, sea salt, whatever the salt is. What do you say to that?
Absolutely, salt is a killer. Regardless of the name you call it, sea salt, Himalayan salt, white salt, avoid it. It's a question of what do you want to preserve. The only machine in your body and my body is your heart. Your heart is meant to pump 5 liters of blood. Wherever you eat salt, water goes. So the more salt you eat, it pulls water and adds it to the 5 liters. All of a sudden, your heart is pumping 6, 7 liters. Something has got to give.
I read the biography of former IG Okiro, when he was involved in an almost fatal accident years and years ago, and he had a condition where he couldn't, whether he couldn't talk or he was almost unconscious and so on. He had a foreign doctor said, tell them to go and get salt. And they say it's not the salt that are packaged. Say those ones that are left open in the. I didn't. You know, so they used that one, and when they applied it to him, and he got back his consciousness. Now tell us, what kind of salt?
So in critical care medicine, when someone loses blood pressure, remember we were talking about salt causing high blood pressure.
Yeah.
When we get patients in the emergency room and they're critical and their blood pressure is severely low, guess what? What we give them is sodium salt.
Really?
Because we need that naturally to do the opposite of what we want.
Yes.
So now
to bring it up.
Yeah, to bring it up. And that confirms it. So when you and I have normal blood pressure, let's stay away from salt. If your blood pressure is significantly low without having to take any medication, then salt substitute will help you. The issue we're dealing with is we add salt to everything we eat in Nigeria. Mama put processed
It's
food.
almost like
everything is low.
the food is not ready until there's salt.
Absolutely. And the other issue we have is we're so close to the equator, we sweat a lot. So you
Yes.
get dehydrated and you're salt loaded. That's double whammy.
Wow. Now, let's look at the age factor. How does it come to play? Now, when do you begin to take pay critical attention to your salt intake, and what levels should certain persons, say between 15 to 30 or 40, take, and babies take? And we have that analysis.
Absolutely. So let's remember that we have to be mindful of our family history. If you have a family history where high blood pressure is common, your dad has high blood pressure, he was diagnosed with high blood pressure at the age of 40, 10 years before that, you should be screening yourself for high blood pressure. The same thing for the cancers, colon cancer and prostate cancer. 10 years before the last diagnosis of a family member. So it goes for all your cardiovascular issues, high blood pressure, heart attack, diabetes. So 10 years before the age of a family member. So if my father or my significant brother, a sibling, was diagnosed with high blood pressure in their 40s, I should be screened in my 30s. It's a silent killer. It's a silent killer for a reason. Most people do not even know.
They don't check their blood pressure.
So you don't want to be late to the party, because by the time you're late, the signs and symptoms are bad.
They have already destroyed so many things. Yes. Kidney. They talk about the organs that are really, I know that it touches, it affects kidney.
Absolutely. So your heart is the only machine. When your heart pumps, what we call cardiac output, your kidney gets 25% of that. So think about that for a moment. If you're overwhelming your heart, it's not going to be able to give the kidneys what it needs. The kidney starts shutting down. When the kidney shuts down, it takes the liver along. That's the hepatorenal syndrome. So you don't want to be losing all those organs.
It's a critical one. And by way of just perhaps enlightening our viewers, talk to them just basically salt intake, why it is bad. Some of them may not even understand where we have begun this conversation from. So just give an overview of why they should watch their salt intake.
Absolutely. The main thing we want to take away is, as good as salt is, anything in moderation is okay. When you do extra, that's where we get into trouble. And because a lot of us do not control where we eat, the mama puts, we're grabbing food on the street, you have to assume they've already loaded it. So for anybody that wants to listen appropriately and want to watch mindful of their health, cut out the more you eat outside. And if you're the type that you have no choice, maybe for socio-economic reason or because you work most of the time, then you want
because you have to attend that Owambe party.
That is it. The Owambe party is
so
where
should we stop eating at parties now?
The earlier, the better we do it.
Well, if I say, okay, well, I'm not eating salt all week. This is just Owambe party. Let me just enjoy myself. Tomorrow we can go back to normal. That's
a good concept, because some of our patients, just like some of our patients said, oh, I don't drink all week, I drink everything up on the weekend.
It's dangerous.
Yeah,
you can kill yourself once.
Exactly. You can kill yourself because your body does not look at what you've done. It's that moment. It's the risk of exposure.
And it can just shake the system.
Honestly. We hear the story all the time. Somebody was fine, was doing okay, and all of a sudden he had a stroke. He slumped over. These are cardiovascular issues. And we know, especially among African American people of sub-Saharan, salt is our #1 killer.
You mentioned earlier the number of grams to take. Now, how do people measure? Because not everybody will understand the grams and how to know how to measure this.
Good. So in order to avoid that mistake, once the food is prepared, you don't need to add anything extra because they've used some of the salt to season, they've used this to boil, so don't add extra. If you are the type that you're an educated consumer and you have to eat outside or you have to buy processed food, read on the label. That's what the New York people passed, that there must be a clear label. 1,500 milligrams is the beer.
Do they label our foods here?
No, they don't.
And that's where we need to be educated.
Do they label your amala when you go to Wait, another thing again is what of portion?
Absolutely, absolutely. Remember, when we're talking about salt now, let's look at the swallow that we eat. A lot of us in this part of the world, all we eat is swallow. Then we ask ourselves, why is it that after we eat swallow, we fall asleep? That's tremendous amount of stress on the system, coupled with the salt load. That's why we develop congestive heart failure. So I tell my patients, no swallow after 2 p.m. And after your dinner, go for a walk.
Really?
No swallow after 2 p.m. After your dinner, go for a walk. 10, 15 minutes of walk will reduce your diabetic risk, will reduce your high blood pressure.
How about fruits? There are some salty fruits. Do they also affect
Yes,
the body?
if they are natural, that's good for you. These are everything you and I are supposed to cook has its natural salt and sugar. We don't need to add any extra.
When people cook rice, for instance, rice is staple. Yes. Why should you cook rice? You cook rice and put salt there.
Absolutely.
Why? That's what I'm asking. Because that's when we grow up. Once the rice don't reach where it's time to put salt.
Yeah,
now.
some people will not even come to your house anymore if you don't have salt to it, because they're used to it. Yes. It's a matter of their taste bud.
We even find out that rice is the greatest source of
All the natural
of salt intake in Nigeria.
Really, how about beans? Because there are those who say that beans also is perhaps good for those who have high diabetes. But then again, there are also those who come out to say beans is not good for those who have diabetes.
So from my cardiovascular clinic, what we tell our patients about diet, it's all about moderation. Yeah. Every time you and I eat, don't just sit. Don't be a sedentary man. Walk around. So even if you eat your swallow and you're able to exercise, your body load and requirement goes down. So in the cases of the beans, it has a lot of carbohydrate, it has a little bit of fiber. We're just shooting for something that will not shoot your sugar up.
Is there a rural, urban dimension to this? Because you know that rural people, they walk, they can get all those things off their system.
Absolutely.
In urban area, you eat your full pounded yam and egusi soup with,
sit in the air conditioner.
with four goat meat and all the others. You put it and everything. After eating it, and take your remote control.
It's actually absolutely is the first.
Yes. Start watching World Cup, Brazil versus. If you're not careful, you have one big beer.
You fall asleep.
Well, bottom line is to watch your salt intake.
Absolutely.
And when it is natural, you can consume.
You can consume it at a bare minimum and go for your walk. Please, a little bit of exercise helps.
Yes. All right, we have to leave the conversation here now. Chief Medical Director of Heritage Men's Clinic, Dr. Rashid Abbasi, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.